these three concepts. Which I came across. So the first concept is ideational. The second is idealistic. And the third one is sensate. So I came across these three concepts reading Parson, the sociologist, specifically his Christianity and modern industrial society. I think it's a conference paper on Sorokin's work. Sorokin was an American-Russian sociologist, Soviet, Rim Sorokin. So this typology about understanding, he came up with this typology for understanding civilizations, I guess. And just now when I was thinking, I realized that it has some parallels with the typology which we discussed with reference to Immanuel Todd. At some point we might look at those parallels, not in this video, but in some other video. So what I want to do is just go through the concepts and how he defines them and how he uses them to see whether those concepts are useful for us or not. So in Parsons' word, this typology relates to three fundamental types of cultural orientation. And we can also use the word civilization here. So let's first start with ideation. Ideational pattern or ideational worldview. In Parsons' word, ideational pattern is one which gives unquestionable primacy to transcendent or transcendental. By transcendental, he means otherworldly. Although, in fact, I think otherworldly is a very vague term. Vague in the sense that it has at least two distinct meanings. Otherworldly can be Christian Islamic type of otherworldly, where this world, especially materialistic world, and there's other world which is actually the eternal world. And in this world you prepare for the other world and life after death. On the other hand, Platonic otherworldly is not, I think it's different. Platonic otherworldly, for example, his ideal world. I don't think it is ideal world. Plato's ideal world is the same thing as the Christian Islamic otherworld, because although Christian Islamic thinkers and also in Neoplatonism, it is used in those contexts, so that's why things are messy. But we can say that Plato's ideal world actually more to do with what is the nature of this world rather than a genuine other world. But anyway, this is a side point at this. So for Sorokin, ideational civilization is the civilization which gives preference to other world. And I think by other world, at least, he also means, Christian type of other world. So the civilization which gives primacy to other world, that's the ideational. And otherworldly, in Parsons' word, otherworldly interests, gives preference to otherworldly interests to this worldly interests. So otherworldly interests are, eternal salvation, for example. Or to put it more directly, you live a life in this world preparing for the next world. As if this world is temporary, you are preparing for eternal world. So it's a way of dealing with this world, but from a perspective of other world. Okay, that's the basic idea anyway. Moreover, in this worldview, according to as Parsons defines it, Parsons describes it. Reality itself is defined as ultimately beyond the reach of senses. And in some instances, beyond the reach of reason as well. I don't know whether Sorokin says that or not. So beyond the reach of senses, that will include Platonic's ideal world as well. But I think not entirely, because senses are an important element in in Plato's epistemology, although they have to combine with reason. So reality itself is defined as ultimately beyond the reach of the senses as transcendental. So the reality itself is beyond our senses, at least, and probably reason on its own as well. So you need revelation. And the goal of life in this sort of world the goal in this life as Parsons defines it, must be to reach the closest possible accord. So accord with the other world and its demands. And it must involve renunciation of the worldly interest. I think this is one way of looking at it, but for example, in Islamic view, renunciation is not something desired in itself, but renunciation is so that other worldly interests, this worldly interests are subsumed under and in service of this worldly interest. And I think generally Christianity also agrees with that, rather than renunciation. So broadly speaking, he said the characteristics of the ideational civilization is otherworldly asceticism, but then this confuses with Weber thesis about Calvin and Protestantism, because Protestantism is sort of the transcendentalization of this Christianity, in the sense that this worldly logic, even if it is defined in terms of this worldly pursuit, even if they are defined in terms of other world, they are focused on this world in a way in which classical Christianity, Catholicism, medieval Christianity, etc. It's totally different from those, because the difference between Protestantism, Calvinism, and other medieval and ancient civilization is that this world become, in a way, success in world becomes material pursuit, becomes desired in itself because it is the sign of your success in the afterworld. So hereafter is there, but in a way, it has been subsumed under success in this world, and success is the material success. So that's why it's not a very good terminology. On the other hand, in Christianity, medieval Christianity or Islam, for example, this worldly pursuit even for the success in afterworld is misguided, because the way to salvation in the hereafter is to live a life as if you are a passerby in this world. Anyway, this is getting a bit more complicated. Probably, so asceticism and mysticism are the pastoral. Mysticism can be this worldly as well. Mysticism in what way? In a way which your epistemology is revelation, and direct contact with the hereafter is the prime orientation, and senses and reason should be subsumed under that orientation, I would think. Okay, so once we have described his first concept, then the next one is easier, because sensate is the exact opposite of, according to him, exact opposite of the first one. Obviously, these are ideal types. No actually existing civilization, replicate these concepts in its abstract form. So the opposite extreme to ideational pattern is the sensate. Here, the empirical in the sense of reliance on senses, I guess. So there is a primacy of empirical rather than here. So empirical in the last hand is a material aspect of reality. The materialism is supreme. So this world. Another world is supposedly non-material. That's why materialism is related to this world, and senses are the way to deal with material reality. But I would say that sensate also could have a spiritual element. So it's not just materialism, but some sort of spiritualism as well, but which is focused on this world. So there would be arts and culture, but that culture is very this worldly. Yeah, this is my own take on that sensate. So aspect really is taken as ultimately real or predominant. In practical conduct, the implication of the sensate view of the world is to make most of the opportunities of here and now. So living this world as if it is eternal. So that's the exact opposite of living in this world as you are a passerby or a wayfarer or a traveler. So then you focus on here and now, so worldly success, power, and hedonistic gratification. And this is not just material, but there is a spirituality of hedonism as well. Or there can be a spirituality, hedonistic or not, which is focused on this world. So you can worship this world as well. So it's not as if you only have one type of spirituality. So the spirituality which is focused on other world is a different sort of spirituality, but you can have a spirituality which is focused on this world. You can have Gnostics of this world. And normally you will see those in art and aesthetics. Okay, so that's the second one. And the third one is a balance between. Idealistic is the balance between ideational and sensate. So it is intermediate between the two, not in the sense of simple compromise, not a compromise, but a synthesis, I guess, which can achieve a harmonious balance. But the thing is, how are you going to define balance when you have defined two poles that's exactly opposite? So how are you going to define the balance? So that's why the whole thing about balance always sounds to me suspicious. because balance is actually defined. What is balance would be defined actually. What is balance would be defined internally in ideational world, in sensate world. So in a third category, when you are defining balance, you would have to come up with a different notion of balance. So this basic classification is used by Sorkin then to outlining a development pattern leading to a history of civilization, from ideational to idealistic periods. So I think that's a good way to understanding these or introducing these three concepts. But I'll come back to this in a more detail in the next session, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wa salli wa sallim ala sayyidina wa mawlana Muhammadin wa ala ali sayyidina wa mawlana Muhammadin wa barik wa sallim. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Amin amin ya rabbal alamin.